The day I found my wife's secret phone and realized my own brother had been sleeping with her. I didn't just lose a marriage, I lost whatever illusion I had left about family, loyalty, and the people I thought would never betray me. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 30 years old, and if you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have told you it was exactly what my parents had always wanted: stable, successful, respectable, and above all, perfect on the surface. I grew up in a household where appearances mattered more than truth, where my father and mother built an image so polished that even I almost believed it for a while. My father had Marcus, my older half-brother, with his first wife before they divorced when Marcus was still a baby. And although my father remarried my mother not long after, he never stopped being involved in Marcus's life. From the outside, it looked like a blended family that functioned well, but behind closed doors, everything felt carefully staged, like we were actors playing roles in a performance we never agreed to. My mother used to tell me their love story like it was something out of a movie, describing how my father saw her through a cafe window and walked in as if fate had pulled him there, how he proposed quickly, how she said yes without hesitation, convinced they were soulmates. But that version of the story always skipped the part where he cheated on her barely a year into their marriage, something he later confessed out of guilt, instead of leaving. My mother chose to forgive him, and they went to counseling, convincing themselves that bringing a child into the world would fix everything. That child was me, to her. I was proof that love could survive anything. But to me, I grew up seeing something very different: a relationship built on compromise, denial, and the constant need to look flawless in front of others. That pressure extended to Marcus and me in ways that shaped who we became. We were pushed relentlessly, expected to excel in school, in extracurriculars, in everything that could make our family look impressive. Marcus went on to attend one of the top medical schools in the country, while I earned my place at an Ivy League business program and eventually co-founded a company with two close friends. On paper, we were exactly what our parents wanted: successful sons who reflected well on the family name. But along with that success came control. My father believed he had the right to guide not just our careers, but our personal lives. And my mother rarely disagreed with him. I remember when Marcus turned 30, my father sat him down and said, "It's time you settle down. You're not getting any younger." As if relationships were just another milestone to check off. At the time, Marcus had been in an on and off relationship with Sophie Bennett for years, and shortly after that conversation, he proposed. Within a year, they were married, and not long after, they had a son. My father proudly told me this like it was one of his achievements, like he had orchestrated Marcus's happiness himself. So when he had the same conversation with me earlier this year, I wasn't surprised. He talked about commitment, about stability, even brought up his own past mistakes as if they were lessons I should learn from. He said, "Having a family grounds you. It gives your life direction," and while I nodded politely, I had already made up my own mind long before that talk. I had been with Lena Hart for 3 years, living together for 2, and I loved her, or at least, I thought I did. I had already planned to propose. I did it on my birthday, surrounded by friends and family, including Marcus. It was one of those moments that felt perfect in every sense, the kind people take pictures of and remember forever. Lena said yes, without hesitation, smiling in a way that made me believe we were starting something real, something honest. 3 months later, we were married, and for a brief moment, I thought I had built something different for my parents, something genuine. But looking back now, that night should have been the first sign that everything was already falling apart. I remember Lena disappearing for a while during the party. I didn't think much of it at the time. People drift in and out during celebrations, and I assumed she was fixing her makeup or talking to someone privately. I was busy, moving between conversations, shaking hands, laughing, playing the role I had been trained for my entire life. What I didn't know was that while I was celebrating our future, Lena was outside with Marcus, and according to the messages I would later read, that was the night everything started. They kissed in the backyard while I toasted to our engagement inside, completely unaware that the foundation of my marriage was already being destroyed before it had even begun. For months, I lived in that illusion, building a life with Lena, making plans, trusting her completely. I had no reason to doubt her, no reason to suspect that my own brother would cross a line so unforgivable. Marcus and I were never particularly close, but we weren't enemies either. There was no history of rivalry, no underlying tension that would explain what he did, if anything. We existed in a kind of distant neutrality, bound by family, but not by friendship. And maybe that's why it hurt the way it did, because I never saw it coming. The truth didn't reveal itself in some dramatic confrontation or suspicious behavior. It came quietly, almost accidentally, the way the worst betrayals often do. One evening, while Lena was out, I was searching through our room for a shirt I couldn't find. It was something small, something ordinary, the kind of moment that should have meant nothing. But as I went through her clothes, I felt something unusual in the pocket of a pair of jeans. When I pulled it out, I found a phone I had never seen before. That was the moment everything changed. I stood there staring at the phone in my hand, already feeling something cold and heavy settle in my chest. Because deep down I knew people don't hide things unless there's something they don't want found. And when I turned it on and saw only one conversation thread, my stomach dropped before I even opened it. The number looked familiar, and it took only a second for it to click. It was Marcus. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment, like opening that message would make everything real, like I still had a chance to put the phone back and pretend none of this existed. But I didn't. I opened it, and within seconds, my entire world collapsed. The messages started about 3 weeks after I proposed to Lena, and they weren't subtle. They weren't ambiguous. They were intimate, shameless, filled with the kind of flirtation that only exists between people who have already crossed a line. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking, reading words that didn't just confirm the affair but revealed how deep it went. They talked about that night at my birthday party, about the backyard, about how they couldn't stop thinking about each other afterward. And then, as the weeks passed, the messages became something worse. They confessed feelings, promised each other a future, and built a plan so calculated it made me feel physically sick. They had agreed to stay with us, to continue their relationships as if nothing was wrong. For years, Marcus wrote, "We just have to be patient. Once my son is older, things will be easier." And Lena replied, 5 years isn't that long if it means we end up together. 5 years. They were going to lie to me, live with me, share a bed with me, pretend to love me, all while waiting for the right moment to destroy everything. They even talked about custody, about how Marcus would handle things with Sophie when the time came. Like it was all just logistics, like the people they were hurting didn't matter. At some point, I stopped feeling anything at all. The shock gave way to something colder, something sharper. I wasn't crying, I wasn't yelling, I was just empty. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every plan, every disgusting detail, and then I placed the phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't want a confrontation, not yet. I didn't want to hear excuses or apologies that meant nothing. I just needed to get out. I packed quietly, methodically, like I was following a checklist. Clothes, documents, essentials, everything I needed to disappear for a while. Lena wouldn't be home until late, which gave me enough time. Before I left, I took the burner phone and placed it on the bed, right in the center, where she couldn't miss it. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. She would understand exactly what it meant the moment she saw it. Driving away from that house felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unravel instead of my own. I checked into a hotel outside the city, somewhere quiet, somewhere I wouldn't be easily found. That night, I sat alone, staring at the screenshots on my phone, replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how the people closest to me had managed to betray me so completely. It wasn't just the affair, it was the deception, the planning, the sheer audacity of it all. The next morning, I called my lawyer. My voice was steady when I said, "I want to file for divorce," and I made it clear that I didn't intend to give Lena anything beyond what she was legally entitled to, which, given the short length of our marriage and our separate finances, wasn't much, if anything. The messages would work in my favor. She had mocked me in those texts, calling my work insignificant, saying she deserved someone like Marcus, a doctor, instead of what she called a glorified accountant. That part didn't hurt as much as it should have. If anything, it just confirmed what I already knew: she had never truly respected me. I blocked both Lena and Marcus that same day. I didn't want to hear from them, didn't want explanations, didn't want apologies. There was nothing they could say that would change what they had done. For 2 days, I stayed in that hotel, cut off from everything, trying to process it all, trying to figure out what came next. On the third day, my phone rang, and when I saw it was my father, I hesitated before answering. Part of me hoped stupidly that he was calling to support me, to tell me he was on my side. Instead, the moment I picked up, he said, "I heard what happened," his tone measured, almost cautious, and for a second, I thought maybe he understood. But then he continued, "You need to keep this quiet for now." I didn't respond immediately, I just listened as he went on, explaining that Marcus had already told him everything, that Lena had figured out I knew when she found the phone, and that neither of them could reach me. Then he said something that made my grip tighten around the phone. "You can't tell Sophie, it would ruin everything." I asked him why, even though I already knew the answer, and what he said next was exactly what I expected, but somehow still unbelievable. He talked about Marcus's child, about how a scandal like this could affect custody, about Sophie's family and their influence. He said, "Marcus has more to lose than you do." And then, as if that wasn't enough, he added, "People make mistakes. You saw how your mother and I worked through things. You can do the same." That was the moment something inside me snapped. He wasn't calling to support me. He was calling to protect Marcus, to protect the family image, to sweep everything under the rug just like they always had. My father wasn't asking me, he was expecting me to sacrifice my dignity, my truth, my pain, all so they could pretend everything was still perfect. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I just hung up. And in that silence, I made a decision that would change everything. For a few minutes after I hung up, I just sat there staring at the wall, replaying my father's words over and over. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became this wasn't just about Marcus and Lena anymore. This was about years of being told to stay quiet, to protect an image that was never real. And I was done playing along. I picked up my phone again, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at Sophie Bennett's name. My thumb hovered there for a moment, not because I doubted what I was about to do, but because I understood exactly what it would set in motion. Once I told her, there would be no going back, no fixing anything, no pretending this family was still intact. But then I thought about the messages, about the way Marcus and Lena had planned to lie to all of us for 5 years, about how my own father expected me to protect that lie, and any hesitation I had disappeared. Sophie deserved to know. She deserved the truth more than anyone. I sent the message without overthinking it. I told her everything about the affair, about how long it had been going on, about the plan they had made behind all our backs. I attached the screenshots, every piece of proof I had, and before I could second guess myself, I added one more detail. That Marcus had gone to my father and asked him to convince me to stay silent. Then I turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear the fallout. I didn't want to read the anger, the accusations, the chaos I knew would follow. I just sat there in silence, letting the weight of what I'd done settle over me. It wasn't guilt I felt, it was something heavier, something more final. I had just burned the bridge completely, not just with Marcus, but with my entire family. A few hours later, when I finally turned my phone back on, it exploded with notifications, missed calls, messages, voicemails. My screen was flooded with them. My mother, my father, relatives I hadn't spoken to in months, all of them reaching out, all of them saying the same thing in different ways. How could you do this? What were you thinking? You've ruined everything. I scrolled past most of them without reading, because I already knew what they would say. They weren't angry at Marcus for cheating. They weren't angry at Lena for betraying me. They were angry at me for exposing it. But there was one message I did open, Sophie's. It was short, almost eerily calm. She wrote, "Thank you for telling me. I know what to do now." That was it. No questions, no panic, no emotional outburst. Just a quiet certainty that made something tighten in my chest. At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. The rest of the messages filled in the details quickly enough. Within hours of receiving my text, Sophie had confronted Marcus. What started as a conversation turned into a full-blown fight, the kind that couldn't be contained behind closed doors. Voices raised, accusations thrown, years of resentment and frustration finally surfacing. By the end of it, Sophie had packed her things, taken their son, and left for her parents' house. And just like that, Marcus's carefully constructed life started falling apart. Apparently, divorce was already being discussed. Not just that, but Sophie was considering filing for full custody, something that immediately put Marcus at a disadvantage. From what I gathered through the messages, there were already underlying issues in their marriage that I hadn't known about. Marcus wasn't around much, often claiming work kept him busy, leaving Sophie to handle everything at home, especially after their son was born. She had been managing the house, the baby, everything, while he checked in and out of their lives whenever it suited him. The affair wasn't the only problem, it was just the final one. And yet, somehow, my family still found a way to blame me. They said I had destroyed a happy family, that I had acted impulsively, that I should have thought about the child before saying anything. My father sent me a message that read, "You've made this worse than it needed to be," and my mother followed with, "Families work through things. Ethan, you didn't have to do this." I read those words more than once, trying to understand how they could twist the situation so completely, how they could look at what Marcus had done and still decide that I was the problem. But the truth was simple. No matter how much they tried to complicate it, if Marcus hadn't cheated, there would have been nothing to expose. I wish I could say their words didn't affect me at all, but that wouldn't be honest. There was a part of me, a small, stubborn part, that felt uneasy. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I could see the damage clearly now. A child caught in the middle, a marriage collapsing, a family tearing itself apart. I didn't cause those things, but I had been the one to bring them into the light, and that wasn't something I could completely ignore. Still, if I had the choice to do it again, I would make the same decision. Because silence would have made me complicit, and I refused to be part of their lie. In the days that followed, I started cutting people off one by one. I blocked my parents, my relatives, anyone who thought I should have protected Marcus instead of telling the truth. The only person I kept communication open with was Lena, and even that was only because of the divorce. She had started messaging me again, long paragraphs filled with apologies, excuses, explanations about how she wasn't thinking clearly, how she didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't respond. I didn't even open most of them. There was nothing she could say that would matter now. But despite all of that, despite the anger, the chaos, the isolation, there was one thing I couldn't ignore: the quiet that had settled in my life. For the first time in years, there was no pressure, no expectations, no performance to maintain. Just me, alone, in a hotel room, with the truth. And strangely enough, that felt better than any illusion I had ever lived in. A week passed in that strange silence, and just when I thought the chaos had finally started to fade, it came crashing back in the most unexpected way through the hotel lobby, loud, aggressive, and impossible to ignore. By then, I had blocked almost everyone, cut off every line that could bring the noise back into my life, and focused only on what mattered: finalizing the divorce and keeping my sanity intact. The only person I hadn't blocked was Lena, and even then, I barely acknowledged her existence. She kept sending messages, long ones, emotional ones, repeating the same phrases about regret and confusion. But I didn't have the energy to engage. If anything, her words only reinforced what I already knew: she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry it didn't work out the way she planned. I had settled into a routine at the hotel, working remotely, keeping my head down, avoiding unnecessary interactions. It wasn't ideal, but it was controlled. And right now, control was the only thing I had left. That's why. When my phone rang from the front desk one afternoon, I immediately felt that sense of control slipping. The receptionist sounded uneasy as she said, "Sir, there are 2 men here asking for you. They're being difficult." I didn't need to ask who it was. When I stepped into the lobby, I saw them immediately. My father and Marcus, standing near the reception desk, both visibly agitated. My father was arguing with the staff, his voice sharp and demanding, while Marcus stood beside him, pacing, his frustration barely contained. They had already spotted my car outside, which meant there was no point pretending I wasn't there. The moment they saw me, everything escalated. Security stepped in quickly, escorting them outside before things could get worse, and I followed. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I knew they wouldn't leave otherwise. The air outside felt heavier, charged with tension, and for a brief moment, none of us spoke. Then my father broke the silence, his tone shifting instantly from anger to something more controlled, more calculated as he said, "We need to fix this." I almost laughed at that. Fix this. As if what had happened could be undone with the right conversation. Marcus stepped forward then, his face drawn, eyes tired, but there was something else there too: desperation. He said, "You don't understand how bad this is getting." And before I could respond, my father continued, laying out what they clearly believed was a solution. According to them, Sophie was preparing for a serious legal battle, one that could result in Marcus losing significant custody of his son. They said things weren't looking good for him, not just because of the affair, but because Sophie had started bringing up other issues: his absence, his lack of involvement, his failure to support her properly after the baby was born. And then came the part that made everything else seem almost insignificant. My father looked at me and said, "We need you to testify." I frowned, not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He went on, explaining it like it was perfectly reasonable, like it was just another favor between family members. He said I would need to speak in court, to clarify certain things about Sophie, to suggest that she was unstable, that she was difficult, that Marcus's actions were a result of the strain she had put on the marriage. Marcus added, "It doesn't have to be anything major, just enough to help my case." For a second, I genuinely thought they were joking, but they weren't. They were completely serious, standing there, asking me no, expecting me to lie in court, to destroy Sophie's credibility, to help Marcus secure full custody of his son after everything he had done. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was entitlement on a level I hadn't thought possible. I felt something settle inside me then. Not anger, not shock, just clarity. I looked at Marcus and said, "You want me to lie for you?" And when he didn't answer immediately, that was answer enough. My father tried to step in again, saying, "This is about family. Ethan, we take care of our own." But those words didn't carry the weight they used to. Not anymore. I shook my head slowly and said, "You stopped being my family the moment you asked me to stay quiet about what he did." Marcus's expression hardened at that, and for a moment, I could see the frustration boiling over. But I didn't give him the chance to respond. I continued, my voice steady. "And now you want me to help you take his child away from the only parent who's actually been there for him? That's not happening." My father's tone sharpened again as he said, "You're making this worse." But I cut him off before he could continue. "No," I said, "you already did that. I just refused to cover it up." There was nothing else to say after that. I turned back toward the hotel, signaling to the security guard to keep them off the property, and walked away without looking back. I could hear my father calling my name, Marcus saying something under his breath, but I didn't stop. For the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel conflicted or uncertain. I felt sure that I had made the right choice, sure that I didn't owe them anything, and most importantly, sure that whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, not as part of a family that only cared about appearances, but as someone who finally understood the difference between loyalty and self-respect. After that confrontation, something shifted permanently inside me, like a door had closed and locked behind me, cutting off whatever connection I still had to the version of my life that revolved around my family. And for the first time, I stopped expecting anything from them at all. The next few days were quieter again, but this time it wasn't the uneasy silence of waiting for the next disaster. It was a deliberate kind of distance. I focused on work, on the divorce, on anything that moved me forward instead of dragging me back. Lena was still messaging me constantly, her persistence almost impressive in a way that felt detached and meaningless. At first, It had been a couple of messages a day. But after the hotel incident, it escalated into something obsessive. Texts coming in every hour as if repetition alone could wear me down. I ignored them until one evening, sitting alone around 8 p.m. I finally opened the thread. What I found wasn't what I expected. Instead of the usual cycle of apologies, she had written something different. She told me she had ended things with Marcus. According to her, they had argued recently, and in that argument, she realized that everything he had promised her leaving his marriage, building a future together, had never been real. She wrote, "It was never love for him, Ethan. It was just physical," and admitted that while she had started to believe in something deeper, Marcus had only been saying what he needed to keep things going. Reading that didn't bring me any satisfaction, but it did confirm something important. Whatever illusion they had built together was already collapsing under its own weight. She went on to say that she wouldn't contest the divorce, wouldn't ask for any settlement or alimony, and that she knew she didn't deserve anything from me. That part, at least, made things simpler. I forwarded the messages to my lawyer immediately, making sure everything was documented in case it became relevant later, for the first time since all of this began. There was a small, practical win, one less battle to fight. I still didn't reply to her. There was nothing left to say, and I didn't want to reopen a door I had already closed. If anything, her situation only reinforced how reckless everything had been. She had chosen to betray me for something that didn't even exist, throwing away a real relationship for a fantasy that Marcus never intended to make real. It wasn't my problem anymore, but it was impossible not to recognize the irony. A couple of months passed after that, and slowly, piece by piece, my life began to stabilize. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Because Lena didn't contest anything and our finances had always been separate, there was little to dispute. After the required 90-day waiting period, everything was finalized cleanly. She kept what she had brought into the marriage, her personal belongings, her car, and that was it. I kept the house, the business, everything else that mattered to me. Moving back into that house was strange at first. It felt like walking into a place filled with memories that didn't belong to me anymore. But over time, it started to feel different, not like a shared space, but like something reclaimed. I changed things, small at first, then bigger ones, reshaping the environment until it no longer reminded me of what had been lost, but instead reflected what I had chosen to keep. As for Marcus and Sophie, their situation became exactly what everyone had feared and exactly what my family had tried to prevent. The divorce turned messy, especially when it came to custody, from what I heard through distant channels. Sophie wasn't backing down, and the evidence of Marcus's behavior wasn't doing him any favors. The affair, his absence, the lack of involvement in raising his son, it all painted a picture that worked against him in court. I didn't take pleasure in it, but I also didn't feel responsible. Those consequences belonged to him. The only part of that situation that still mattered to me was my nephew. Despite everything, Sophie reached out to me once, briefly, and told me that I was still welcome to see him. That meant more than I expected it to. In the middle of all this destruction, it was one of the few things that felt untouched by betrayal, something genuine that hadn't been corrupted by lies or selfish decisions. It reminded me that not everything had to be lost just because some people chose to break what they had. Looking back now, I don't regret what I did, not for a second. If anything, I regret that it took something this extreme for me to finally see things clearly. I spent years living under expectations that were never mine, maintaining relationships that were built more on obligation than trust, believing in people who valued appearances over honesty. It took losing all of that for me to understand that sometimes destruction isn't the end. It's the beginning of something more honest. I don't know what my future looks like yet. I know I'll have a family of my own someday, but it won't be built on lies, and it won't be shaped by the need to impress anyone else. It will be real, even if that means it's imperfect. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that loyalty isn't about protecting people from the consequences of their actions. It's about standing by the truth, even when it costs you everything. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do isn't holding a family together. It's walking away when staying means losing yourself. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear how you would have handled a situation like this.